podcast. This week is UFC Vegas 53, and we're headed back to the Apex for a showdown. What could be a number one contender fight at light heavyweight. We got the former champ Jan Blachowicz taking on Aleksander Rakic, and in the co-main event also takes place at light heavyweight. We got Ion Cutelaba taking on Ryan Spann, and then later on, throughout the card, there's also two big important fights in women's flyweight division. We got 4 ranked contenders there. So overall, not a terrible showing from the UFC this Saturday. Ready to jump in, see what kind of spots we like on Saturday. Before we do, if you haven't before, go ahead and toss the video a like, subscribe to the channel. Both of us in the green last week, so you cannot complain there. The pay-per-view saw 5 split decisions. I think through 14 fights, we ended up with only 4 finishes. But man, did Gaethje and Oliveira live up to its hype. Man, did Tony and Ferguson live up to its hype. Man, I'll go ahead and do you the honors of going over last week for us real quick.
Yeah, so we'll start off with your card. First one, worst fight of the night by a long shot. Rose Namajunas and Carlos Esparza. I don't know. I think after that fight, we were both okay with Rose losing her belt after that performance. But moving on, your Randy Brown pick, you hit it at good plus money, plus 115 and 2.5 units. Trusted your gut. I'm sure Randy Brown, didn't make you feel too confident during the fight, trying to showboat and stuff, but he put on a good performance and was the rightful winner. And then you finished out the night positive 0.47 units. I think it was a really good night, and it helped that we were both on what I'm going to start with my card, the under 2.5 in that main event.
Big play for us both.
Huge play and guaranteed violence. Glad that we both hit it. We maybe should have gone even harder. It just seemed like a possible mush bet of the week. I was on the opposite side with Carlos Esparza. Again, it's like not one that I'm proud of by any means, but it was nice to get her at...
You had the right ticket in your hands at the end of that fight.
Right. So I guess having the plus money on that shit fight was something to point out. One that I took a little risk on, Fialho wins by TKO round 1. It's only plus 140, but damn, did he deliver, man?
Absolutely.
That was a good one. And I ended up the night positive 0.231 units, and happy that we're both back on track, getting it rolling. In our main event, we have an exciting matchup in the light heavyweight division between Aleksander Rakic and Jan Blachowicz. I know we've both kind of been on Rakic since he first came into the division, kind of the dark horse for us. And he now finds himself one shot away from that title bout against the former champ here. It's an odd one to me because we're seeing a light heavyweight fight lined at 4.5 rounds. And, my God, my eyes lit up when I initially saw that, but breaking the fight down a little bit more, I don't think I'm as excited as I once was to try and play that. I think the majority of this fight stays on the feet, and I think it'll be Rakic winning the majority of those exchanges. But that being said, Rakic doesn't really have the most aggressive approach to his striking game. Sure, he can knock somebody out with one shot, like in the Jimmy Manuwa fight, but he's shown a level of patience in his game that makes for a more low-volume point-fighting contest rather than a slugfest. Jan, on the other hand, he's been known for his block-a-blitz in the past, but his game has kind of developed over the years, and he's been exposed a few times being reckless, like in the Thiago Santos fight, so we see a lot more patience out of him as well. If this fight does go to the mat, even for a short amount of time, I think I'm going to edge Rakic in that. I think that Rakic will be the one who initiates the grappling. We saw it a couple times in his past fights, but I do think that that's a plan B strategy for Rakic. Although it might not go over well with the crowd, I expect this to go to decision, and I expect Rakic to edge out the majority of the rounds on the scorecards. He's kind of part of this new wave of light heavyweights. He's just bigger, younger, and more athletic. I kind of see a passing of the torch here from Jan to Rakic.
Yeah, man, you and I are coming out on the same side here. When you talk about career resurgence and things, you got to mention Blachowicz here at 39 years old. He starts off, 2-4 in the UFC, and then goes on to win like 9 of 10 in a row, ends up earning that shot at the belt when Jones vacates it. And I thought that's when he puts on an absolute career best performance against Dominic Reyes. The jab looked good. He beat him up with the side kicks and put him away in like the second round. And you're right, throughout this run, no more block-a-blitzing. He's a lot more patient in his approach, no more overextending with bad defense. But when I do look at this 5-fight win streak he was on before Glover, I see 3 middleweights, man, and I see 3 middleweights who weren't having trouble at middleweight and wanted to come up. I saw they were literally doing one fight at light heavyweight, and a lot of them took Blachowicz because thought that was an easy fight at light heavyweight. You got Jacare Souza, Luke Rockhold, And Israel Adesanya, in my opinion, had absolutely no business going up to light heavyweight. And so I don't really know how much the win streak holds. And then he gets Glover Teixeira, who's the first grappler he's got in a long time, and it looks just like it did when he was 2-4 in the UFC, getting out wrestled to begin with. So he's 39, man. He's coming off of neck surgery. Not a lot of things that I'm liking on the side of Jan Blachowicz, and there's a lot to love, like you said, for Rakic. 6'4", man, just turned 30. He's got a phenomenal frame for division, showing you he can knock you out on the feet, showing you he can wet blanket you for 15 rounds or for 15 minutes. And outside of the Volkan Ozdemir fight, the dude should be on like a 15-fight win streak right now. You bring me to the biggest point, and it's his absolute shit volume. You know, it's patience, bad volume. I don't really know what it is, but 46 strikes in his debut over 15 minutes. He lands 104 against Justin Ledet, but when you go in there and look at that, 78 of those are while he was on the ground. 36 versus Thiago Santos. You got like 44 versus Smith. He just wet blanketed him in little to no ground and pound. So you're right. As the fight has 5 rounds, you know, I don't know if I want to lay minus 170 on the guy with that bad volume, especially when I got him at minus 110 the first time around. So I come out on the same side of you, probably Rakic by decision, and you get a much better line. In the co-main event in the evening, we do stay at light heavyweight here, where we see Ryan Spann taking on Ion Cutelaba. With Ryan Spann, one of the Fortis MMA guys, he's got great size for their division. It is nuts this guy used to make 185 because he's like 6'5", 80-inch reach. He is coming off of an absolute ass whooping that he took from Lionheart Smith. And outside of the size, you know, the athleticism, the size of Ryan Spann, I don't know how much substance there really is behind it, in my opinion. It's somewhat low volume, low output, looks for that home run shot. I don't think he has the greatest wrestling either, and if he's going to try to use it, I don't necessarily think he's got the gas tank to back it up for 15 minutes either. The last 3 fights this guy had have ended in the first round, and when you watch his tape back, as he gets extended, he really doesn't look good. And round 3 versus Sam Alvey is horrible for him, and that's why it's a split decision. Chin looked super suspect last time against Anthony Smith. It's 4 times he's been knocked out in the past, and with Cutelaba being the smaller guy, he's going to have a big speed advantage, and he's going to throw big wild hooks. I won't be shocked if one of those catches him, but Ion's path is usually, you know, to wrestle here, and I expect for him to do the same. I know he's out of Extreme Couture now, and remember the pictures floating around before the Devin Clark fight. He was in much better shape, and he actually looked like he could wrestle for a lot longer in that fight. So I'm going to go with Ion Cutelaba, minus 200, though. I don't know if I'm going to get there to play him.
Yeah, that's a tough price to lay on somebody who's, you know, willing to play possum in the middle of an MMA match. I don't know. The Devin Clark fight, he did look great in it. Devin Clark, in my eyes, has always been the overblown middleweight. Not really a true test of your skills, in my opinion. That being said, this would easily be the biggest win for Ryan Spann in his career. Hasn't really faced anybody to this level, and when he has, he's lost pretty badly. Spann being 6'5" makes it a little bit different. I do think that'll play. That's kind of the biggest factor between Devin Clark and Ryan Spann, is that Spann is a true light heavyweight, even though, like you said, he's gotten down, and even in the welterweight division in his amateur career. So I do think that it's at least going to be closer than what these odds suggest. But if Spann can survive that early onslaught, we see a lot of first-round finishes from Cutelaba. He's not really the guy, cardio-wise, that I'd like to try and fade Cutelaba with, but I do think that he can make this a whole lot greasier than these odds are suggesting. I'm gun to my head. I'm taking Cutelaba, but not loving that price at all.
With you.
All right, for my fight to watch, it's going to be the opening fight on the card between Nick Maximov and Andre Petroski. And I think this is going to be an absolute dogfight. Seeing Petroski sitting at plus 330, that's nuts to me. Both guys, they have like this grappling style of attack. Maximov has more of the cardio jiu-jitsu based, where Petroski's more of that strength-based wrestling. And I think that's going to make for a killer style matchup. If this stays on the feet, which we've seen in the past from 2 wrestlers squaring off, I do think that both these guys lack the skills to ever put them in the top 10 because their games just aren't rounded out yet. But I do give the slight edge to Andre. I think that Andre's biggest problem in this matchup and a concern for a lot of people is going to be his cardio. But from what I saw out of his last fight with Hu Yazong, overcoming that cardio dump and getting the late third round finish, I think that's huge for me. And it proved to me that he's at least working towards something that I think could actually make some impact in this division. On the Maximov end, I saw a great ability to stick to the game plan and kind of gut out a win against Puna in his last fight. But God, he had nothing on the feet at all. You know, by the second round, he was panic shooting on Puna from the other side of the octagon with zero setup at all. I think in the first round, it's undoubtedly going to go to Petroski. He's going to be more than willing to engage with Maximov in the grappling. And I expect him to find himself on top, whether it's in a scramble or dumping Maximov on his head. Only time will tell in the later rounds, but I do like the fact that Petroski just went 8 minutes with Phil Hawes in between his last fight and now in a grappling match. I do think that he's going to have at least 2 rounds of cardio if this does go to the judges. I see him edging this out or possibly getting a finish. So, you know, I love Petroski at plus 330. I think this fight a lot closer to 50-50 than a lot of people would like to say.
Yeah, man. So Petroski on Tough, you know, was one of the guys that I was really liking. I thought had a ton of potential there, and he's actually, you know, I think it's coming off 2 round 3 finishes in a row. So I think you got Michael Gilmore in the third round as well. So, you know, kind of dispelling the cardio, you know, thing that he did show on on Tough. And he comes out of a gym that I am super, super high on. Daniel Gracie trains with Pat Sabatini and, you know, Jeremiah Wells and who was the other one? Sean Brady up there, a really big, you know, up-and-coming welterweight. So I'm really high on Petroski. With Hu Yaozong, though, man, you know, you're talking about a very inexperienced Chinese fighter and things who he really had a wrestling advantage over. And Michael Gilmore, another guy who was like an alternate to the show and things like that. And I'm pretty sure has fought at welterweight, you know, since then in his next fight. So Petroski had a real big advantage there, and it still took him to round 3 in a bit cardio suspect to get the job done. Whereas with Maximov, I feel like Puna offers much more on the feet than you're going to see from Petroski, you know, and much more power. Trains out of Extreme Couture, so his hands are good. I think the style that Maximov implores is the constant grappling, and that is what's going to wear on Petroski. You know, he's not going to give him time to catch his breath, to catch that second wind out at space and strike when he needs to. Maximov will force the wrestling from almost, I think, as soon as the fight starts. And while Petroski, you know, plus 300, yeah, that is a little bit wild. I'm done with Maximov burning holes in my pocket, and I have put him in one of my parlays, but yeah, off the bat, I can see why you think that. For my fight of the night, I'm going to go with Davey Grant taking on Luis Smolka. I think we are in for a scrap here at 135. Both guys are always known for having exciting fights. I believe Davey Grant's actually taken home a bonus in his last 4 fights there. He is getting a bit up there in age, you know, and as you're in the lower weight classes where speed usually tends to be a big factor, you can't really get away with age as much in the lower weight classes. But I think I'd have to agree with the odds makers here. I think Davey Grant's got a pretty winnable fight in front of him. The dude is absolutely tough as nails. You just see his last 2. They're losses, but he's going toe-to-toe with Yanez and Chito Vera. You know, Yanez is probably one of the top prospects at bantamweight, and Chito Vera is now a top 5 bantamweight after his last performance. And for these guys to not be able to put Davey Grant away, I'd really be shocked if Luis Smolka was able to do so. Submission threat of Smolka might be the most, I guess, that I'm worried about. But he's submitting low-level guys. You know, I think his win over Sue Mudarji and Mudarji's debut up at bantamweight is the only win he still got where the guys are even left on the roster. So he's not beating a very high level of guys. And Smolka himself up at bantamweight, he likes a lot of the strength, you know, being a previous flyweight. And I think he doesn't really have the wrestling to get these fights down to the ground and really cause Davey that issue. On the feet, I'm going to have to favor Davey Grant, man. I love the guy striking. I love the way he digs to the body to drop your high guard, pretty much knock Martin Day out and Jonathan Martinez with the same combination, you know. And he loves the teep kick to the body. He's been training at Syndicate MMA. There's actually pictures with Vince Morales, who just beat Luis Smolka. So he's training at a gym who's game planned for Smolka and things before, which you like to see. And like I said, Smolka is just coming off that loss to Vince Morales. But you know, he got knocked out in the first round, but I'm not going to say he looked horrible before that, because he really didn't, man. He was on the gas early, ton of forward pressure, laying in his offense, and had Vince on the back foot. Historically, though, that has been a pace that Louis Smolka can't really keep up over the full 15 minutes as he tries to fade down the stretch. He's got a slick right hand. He is real smooth on the mat in transition, but again, I think he lacks a lot of the strength to get high-level guys down. He's had a Team Oyama who's fresh off a title win with the Sparza last week, so he's got that championship aurora around him and things right now, riding high. But man, the picks for going to be for me is going to be Davey Grant. I think the fight primarily is going to take place on the feet. But outside of that, I think I favor Grant just about everywhere in this fight here, and it's a massive step down from Yanez and Marlon Vera. And Smolka doesn't really have the best durability, man, and I might see Davey Grant actually putting him away here. How do you see this one?
Yeah, so I think it's odd seeing a 3-1 favorite that's not ranked and coming off of 2 losses.
Right.
I think that right there is kind of a red flag. But you look at the matchup, and yeah, Smolka, not the biggest guy for the division. You talked about lacks the wrestling to initiate his grappling game, and is willing to give up control time off of his back. Davey, if he chooses to wrestle, he can. If he chooses to strike, I think that he's more than willing to. He's been striking with way better guys recently. The chin issues of Smolka, I think it all does lean towards towards Davey. But I do think that 36 years old, 3-1 odds. There's a lot of cause for concern, although I do lean him in this matchup all the way through. For our fighter to watch, I'll be taking Tatsuro Taira. This is a huge opportunity for a new star in the UFC. Japan has little to no representation, and the representation that they do have, I doubt that any of them are going to be lining themselves up for a title shot anytime soon. Tatsuro, he's undefeated, 22-year-old prospect, load of potential, and has a great build for the flyweight division that could present some real problems for the bulk of the division. The UFC's kind of made it clear that they'll do everything that they can to attempt to make this a smooth transition to fighting in the States for Tatsuro's debut. He was flown out over 2 months ago to train at the PI, given a nutritionist, as well as personalized interviews with translators. The whole shebang, man. The UFC would really like to tap into this Japanese market, which is why they're showing this fight for free on YouTube and only Japan. I doubt that they picked Candelario by chance, and I would assume they're kind of lining up Tatsuro here. Not to mention they had to move this fight 2 weeks back due to illness from the Candelario side, and now he's expected to go out there, cut weight again, perform his best. I just don't see that happening. So I think all the pressure's on Tatsuro, but I also think that he's set up to make a big bang in the division right here in his debut. Yeah,
man. So I've even seen some things out there, rumors about, Vegas messing the lines up and things like that. And that's why they moved this fight back 2 weeks. Cause I know you were on him at like plus 130 inside the distance. And now you're looking at like plus 105, plus 110. You're not even getting the same line this time around. And not much has really changed,
Right.
Candelario illness, if that is really the case, of course you don't like to see him having to cut weight, 2 weeks later again. And while the Japanese, I guess regional scene is probably not going to be too impressive, I don't think he's fighting the best competition over there. Maybe what a lot of the Asian market has issues with is the wrestling when they come over here to us. Candelario's not really screaming for me to bet him either, I don't really see a whole lot of things that I like on his side. I'm hoping for the same thing the UFC does, man. I hope he comes in here, and I hope the Japanese star, 22 years old, sets himself up for long-time success here. For me, going to pick another debuting young fighter. I'm going to go with Jake Hadley, currently sitting at plus or minus 210, pretty similar to Tatsuro as well. Was scheduled to make his debut in London, so, Dana obviously likes him, was putting him on his hometown card to get him some love. He was a Cage Warriors champion as well, and so he's already been a full 5 rounds in his career, so it's something that you really like to see. He's really talked about highly of Leon Edwards. And the UFC must really like this guy as well. Missed weight on the Contender Series in his fight. And then, when Dana was going to sign him, he was talking about some issues he was having with the employees or something during his weight cut. You remember he was just real hesitant to sign him, but he did anyway. Jake Hadley has really good size for the flyweight division, likes to be the bully in there, put you on your back foot. And when you have a guy like that, you really got to gain his respect early, to make him go backwards as well. And I don't necessarily know if Nascimento has that kind of fight-changing power, to get Hadley's respect early. Hadley does have like a high guard, somewhat like Justin Gaethje. He just throws his hands up to block a lot of the punches, and it's going to serve his opponents well to go to the body. Hadley, if the fight goes his way, he's going to like to get the fight down to the mat. You saw on the feet, it was relatively close to Mitch Raposo in the Contender Series, but the moment it went to the ground, he sliced right through this guy in the second round. And I'm not going to compare Hadley's level of wrestling to a Russian wrestler in Ulanbekov, but Ulanbekov for about 5 fights now, has shown a tendency to have issues holding people down. And for him to gain 12 minutes of control time on Nascimento, I think the openings will be there for Hadley to grapple a little bit, and I think he's a more of a submission threat than Ulanbekov is. So I wouldn't be shocked here if Hadley catches a sub, racks up some control time on the mat. And then the last point I want to bring up, we've seen Dana pass on guys time and time again who people think should be signed on the Contender Series, and then it proves to be the right move when they go out and lose again on the regional scene. For Dana to give a guy who's not making friends, and then to miss weight, for Dana to still give you a shot, I think Dana sees potential, and that's why he's my guy to keep an eye on Saturday.
Yeah, I like it. You touched on him kind of giving all the people backstage some trouble in his Tapology pick. He's flipping off the camera. I think dude just has a bad attitude, and he's probably hard to work with. I think that's a great fighter to watch, and making his debut at -210, he's got some expectations to live up to. Our next segment is Underdog of the Night. Now, I already talked about mine already. It's Andre Petroski. I think if you get him at +300 or better, I think that's an excellent plus EV shot. I do think that Maximov is rightly favored, but I think that this is more of a 60-40 style matchup, and it's being represented as an 80-20 style. So for the sake of plus EV, I do think that Andre Petroski money line at +300 or better is a solid bet.
For fights, that's probably going to play out, for fighters who are relatively similar in how they fight, you really can't hate that type of number. For me, I'm going to take Viviana Araujo. She officially hit +100 at the time of recording here. If you want a better price tag, women's fights typically go to decision, and you're probably going to get a better price tag there. On the feet, I think the fight's probably going to play out relatively close. KGB, a few inches taller and longer, tries to stick behind her jab, rack up some volume. While Vivi's more known to sit down on her punches and let her hands fly. And I think in terms of just like pure boxing as well, I think I like what I see coming from Vivi a bit more. In the Apex, it is harder for girls to stay on their bike as much. They don't have as much room to do, and they're forced to engage. I think that does help Viviana Araujo out. And then as well, I think that's going to help her land some of the takedowns, which is how I think she's going to win this fight. I think she's a very good grappler on her part, extremely strong in the grappling transitions. She holds a 94% takedown defense, and when you run through some of the girls, Alexis Davis, that's a good wrestler for the division, 0 for 4. Montana De La Rosa, another good wrestler for the division, goes 1 for 6, and she's only credited with 8 seconds of control time on that takedown. Roxanne Modafferi, the legend wrestler of that division, goes 0 for 5, and then offensively she's shown to be a really good wrestler as well. And KGB has shown to be a very bad defensive wrestler. Her 3 decision losses in a row there were because she gave up the takedowns, and her 2 win streak in a row right now, Antonina Shevchenko, that's a bad fighter in my opinion with no ground game. And Calvillo was literally like a month and not even 2 months removed from that finish from Jessica Andrade in the first round. She was just desperate to hop back in there and get a win, not in a headspace, and she quits on the stool, So a lot of love for KGB lately, but I don't really necessarily, get it. She went out there and lost to Roxanne Modafferi, and then in the very following fight, Vivi just beats the brakes off of her, And so at +100, Viviana Araujo is a good underdog, I think.
Moving on to our prop bet, sticking with the same fight, I'm going Andre Petroski inside the distance. You're getting that at +550 all the way up to +900. I think that's a pretty solid bet. I'd even look at him at round 1 if it's over +1,000. I think his win condition the majority of the time is going to be that. And I also, as we talk about it more and more, I'm really talking myself into Petroski, so I might be laying a little more units later on in the week.
Yeah, you're all against Maximov here, and man, he's burnt holes in my pockets, twice in a row now, and I'm jumping on his side here. I'm not trying to get burnt 3 times in a row. My decision, fight I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, is, as well, Rakic by decision. I locked that in at +200. I didn't want to lay that minus 170 when I had basically virtually pick'ems the first time around, so I wanted to find a better way that I thought to play him. Rakic's fought light heavyweights with power before. Ozdemir, Manoa, Thiago Santos. Boring or not, the guy does not put himself in a lot of danger to be hit by that power. And I think he's just in his absolute prime right now, man. Bigger, faster, and just it's hard to see a guy who's 39 years old coming off losing the belt, coming off a neck surgery, being in the best form of his career. Biggest reason, though, I do want to bet on Rakic is I do think he has a wrestling advantage, and the wrestling is what's always caused Jan Blachowicz, issues in the past. It very well could be a potential snooze fest. I understand, 4.5 rounds for a light heavyweight fight screams, man, just play that over time. But there is a high clip that this does hit the scorecards. In the UFC, Jan's only been TKO'd by Thiago Santos, who has a ton more power in the hands, I think, than Rakic does, and submitted by Glover, who has much better jiu-jitsu than Rakic does. But I do think Rakic has all the tools to get the job done. I just don't think he gets Jan Blachowicz out of there. So Rakic by decision at plus 200 is how I'm playing it.
So my best bet on the card, it's more of a parlay piece, but I do think that there's still value even on it straight, is Tetsuro Taira. And I think that everything points for him winning this fight. I think that he does have advantages in the grappling realm. I think that he'll end up on top, whether Candelario's one to shoot or it stays standing. I think that he's the much faster, more powerful fighter. So I don't know. I think Taira has him covered just about everywhere. And at minus 240, although that's not the best looking price tag, I do think that is an absolute lock for a parlay piece.
Who would you parlay it with?
Personally, I parlayed it with Verna Jandiroba, I think.
I dig it.
Yeah, you dig it? You like the Verna Jandiroba?
Absolutely, and you got plus money out of it. I'm also 3 units deep on Verna Jandiroba, and so I think she's the clear winner in that fight with Angela Hill. I think that's something we should mention since we're both on her. Best bet for me, Chookagian, money line minus 165, minus 170, and you were getting Chookagian decision at plus money at plus 110. So I hit that as well. To me, it's like death, taxes, and Chookagian by decision. She's not finishing the soul. I kind of told myself I'm done playing women's chalk MMA, but Caitlin Chookagian is one of those girls who's continually made me money time and time again. It's probably going to go over, like all of her fights. So the over 2.5 is a parlay piece. I think that hits at like a 75% of the time, despite Amanda Ribas showing the chin issues a little bit of time. Chook, in my opinion, especially with Val there, she's never going to touch the belt. But I don't think Chookagian falls out of the top 5 of the division, like ever. I think she's such a hard fight for a lot of these girls. She's 6-2 in the last 4 years, with the only losses coming to Valentina and Jessica Andrade, And while the resume of Amanda Ribas, it's much more generous, man. Emily Whitmire, cut. Paige Van Zant, cut. Reina Marcos, I'm pretty sure. I know she's a .500 fighter, but I'm pretty sure she's cut at this point. So it leaves your best win being Verna Jandiroba when you got dropped in round 1 and had to come back to win the last 2, or Mackenzie Dern when she's returning from her pregnancy. I'm not really high on Amanda Ribas. She's now coming up to flyweight to fight a girl who's 5'9", the longest girl in the division, has 6-inch reach on Ribas, and already fights so much longer than she really is behind the jab. She's been working on the wrestling a ton, and I might be jinxing it here, man, but I don't really see a world where Amanda Ribas rides out top control on Caitlin here, and it's going to go decision. It's probably going to play out pretty close, but I like Chookagian to win on the scorecards, man. She's made a living off of it.
Moving on to our quick pick segment, we'll start off the night with 2 middleweights and Nick Maximov taking on Andre Petroski. And if you guys don't already know, I'm on the Petroski side here. I think the wrong guy is, maybe not favored. I think Nick should be favored, but I do think that Petroski's getting severely overlooked here, and I do think that he's going to come in with an upset.
I'm shocked that this is honestly the first fight opening up the card. Did Maximov not co-main event earlier in the year? Maybe they realize how boring of a fighter he is and give him a lesson here. I'm going to be on the Maximov side here, but I can't hate the love with the line sitting the way it is on Petroski. Candelario, Tatsura at flyweight. I'm going to go with Tatsuro, man. I think the UFC wants him to win. They put him in a good position to win.
I couldn't agree more. We've kind of already talked about it, but yeah, Tatsuro's the side. Moving on, we've already talked about this one as well. We're both pretty heavy on Verna. I think that she's going to finally put an end to the 37-year-old Angela Hill run.
Me too, man. I honestly won't be shocked if she goes out here and submits Angela Hill on Saturday. Next up, Michael Johnson taking on Alon Patrick, and my goodness, this is what I told you yesterday, what could seem like the easiest line of the week at like minus 150 on Michael Johnson, but I understand no one wanting to bet that line at all. Mm-hmm. He's going to win until he's just not going to win. Michael Johnson's the pick, man.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to lean Michael Johnson here, but, you know, prayers up for anybody who actually lays that price tag. Moving on, we go to the flyweight division, where we see Vivian Arujau taking on Andrea Lee. And we're both on Arujau. I think that the wrong girl is favored in this matchup, and I'm happy to take the plus money on Vivi.
Taking Vivian Arujau by decision as well myself. Jake Hadley versus Nascimento. Hadley was my fighter to watch. You know, he's half experienced as Nascimento, but I think there's going to be times in this fight where, you know, he's able to get that top control and potentially hunt for the sub. So give me Jake Hadley.
Yeah, I'm also going to lean Jake Hadley. I want to see a post-fight interview as well from him. Moving on, we go to the lightweight division, where we see Frank Camacho coming in as the underdog to Manuel Torres. Everybody and their mama seems to like that plus money on Camacho, but after re-looking at that fight, no way in hell I'm laying hard-earned money on Camacho. I think I'm going to go with Manuel Torres here, but I think it is a 50-50 fight.
You miss weight and get knocked out by Justin James, you're on my fade list, dude. You're never getting my money. I don't care if you're plus money. Manuel Torres is going to go out there and knock Frank Camacho out on Saturday. Chukagian Ribas. Chukagian's going to line my pockets, hopefully, for like the 18th time on Saturday. Chukagian by decision.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Chukagian as well. Moving on, we go to the bantamweight division, where we see Luis Smolka taking on Davey Grant. Davey Grant's the side here. Don't love him at the price tag, but he's the side.
Davey Grant for me as well. I think he gets it done inside the distance, probably with the knockout TKO on the feet. Ryan Spann versus Cutelaba. Man, I know everybody thinks that this is just lined up for a finish. I think Cutelaba's going to wrestle fuck him for 15 minutes, and that Cutelaba plus 750 decision is staring me in the face. So I'm going to go Cutelaba, but not laying minus 200.
Yeah, I'm not laying minus 200 either, and I can't even play the round one plus 130 prop. I do think that Cutelaba's going to win, and he has plenty of paths to victory. And then in the main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Aleksander Rakic. Like I said earlier, I think that we're kind of passing the torch here. Rakic is the new wave, and he should get the dub.
I'm on Rakic's side as well, man. I've hit that decision prop at plus 200. I think he's way more skilled than Blachowicz. Blachowicz is a tough dude to get out of there, though. So hopefully Rakic, another boring performance maybe, and then old Magomed Ankalaev gets that title shot next, you know. Appreciate you guys watching with us. There's only 11 fights, man, on Saturday, so I hope to God everybody make weight, or we're going to have like a 2-hour fight night come Saturday. Appreciate you hanging out with us. If you haven't liked the video, sub to the channel. We'll see you next week.
Peace.